It's finally here. The episode, the podcast that you've all been waiting for. This is the top 10 greatest wrestlers ever. The top 10 all time. We've done now 4 parts to this series that's been building up to it. There's been some controversy throughout. There's been some placings that have ruffled feathers, got people annoyed, got people questioning the integrity of the series.
Wow.
But through it all, we're here now with legitimately the greatest 10 of all time. Kevin, how you doing, pal?
Pal, I'm lovely. I cannot wait to finish this series. It has been a hell of a good time doing our greatest top 50 wrestlers of all time. Unbelievable. I can't believe we're here, pal. This is powerful. This is effective. This is inspirational. It's a pleasure. Now, first we gotta plug a couple things. Spotify, please, 5-star reviews. Um, YouTube. Our YouTube channel is I was gonna say 400. We're only 4 subscribers off from 700. So if anyone that's new, never seen us before, if you watch us regularly but you're not subscribed, just hit that button. Just hit that little button there below the video that says subscribe. Please, it'll help us out a lot. We just need 4. We're not asking for a lot. Just 4 of you.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, we're gaining like 15 subs over the weekend from a bit of Tony Khan content. Just us just bluntly reacting to what he was doing on X, getting us 15 subs. So that was cool. We're now 4 off. Hit the sub button if you're not already. All that good stuff. Get to 700 and then onto 1,000. See how quickly that can happen. So, Kevin, I mean, for starters with you, we're not going to go over any other topics today. We'll probably do like a video later on in the weeks or maybe like some sort of extra, something or other. But as far as today, Kevin, you've got your list ready. I've got my list ready. This will be powerful.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. Should I go first? So, well, it doesn't really matter. But basically, what we're gonna do here is you're gonna say your 10th, I'm gonna say my 10th, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
You want to start it? Go ahead, pal.
I'll happily start on. Yeah, I think now that we're at the top 10, this format will work better. When we're doing like 40 through 31, if I'm doing 40, Kevin's doing 40, that can get confusing and a bit like, huh? But with this, it's very clear. These are the 10 greatest of all time, objectively, obviously, because we're saying it, right? It's objectively the greatest of all
Right.
time.
Even
So
though our
Kevin,
lists are gonna be different, it's still objective.
exactly right. Even though that contradicts the meaning of the word, we're going to forget that and just run with that punchline. And just one more thing, Kevin. I remember we each had one wrestler last episode who many people deemed should be top 10, who was outside our top 10. I know for me, I had Randy Savage just outside mine. I think you had Triple H just
Yeah.
outside yours.
Yep.
So both wrestlers who most people unanimously agree are top 10, they were addressed by each of us respectively in a previous episode. So, Kevin, without further ado, let's cut the crap, pal. Number 10. On my list, I've got Bruno Sammartino at number 10. When it comes to Bruno, to me, he's the Wilt Chamberlain of wrestling. The numbers themselves just are irrefutable. You can criticize the era. You can say that was 60 years ago. No one was good back then. There's a different time. Some of that's fair, some of it's not. But the fact is, what we do know, he was WWE champion, what, 10 years? He was, he was the guy in the WWF, the WWF. He was the guy for 10 years, the face of the company, the face of the promotion, the face of the territory. That's massive. That's pretty much the longest run on top. I mean, holding the title of anyone really. And granted, what stops him from being Mount Rushmore number one is the fact of the era, because there wasn't television week to week. There wasn't, excessive eyeballs. It was just a territory at that stage. Limits him to number 10. It is still top 10 all time. Because when I was looking at this, I'm like, I can't not have Bruno in the top 10. Like, that would be blatantly wrong, I feel like. So I've got him number 10. He's made the top 10. One of the greatest to do it. Just, yeah, Wilt Chamberlain of wrestling, pal.
There you go. I would say he's more like Bill Russell, but I'll address that in a moment.
Okay.
So for number 10, I have Bret the Hitman Hart.
Wow.
I had him a little higher originally in my first draft. I had him a little bit higher, but then I was like, Bret Hart really was never the number one guy at any point in time. Like, yeah, he was the most famous wrestler, most notorious wrestler from like 97 and 99, roughly, till he retired when Goldberg kicked his head into the fifth row. But he was never really the number one guy. he was kind of number two to Shawn, you know, both in the pecking order and the way they presented them on screen and in Vince McMahon's mind. So that was the one thing that kind of bumped him down a few places for me. But otherwise, what can I say about the guy that hasn't been said? Bret Hart, like I said, one of the most recognizable wrestlers in the world. You know, like if we go on the street, pal, if you and I go to a supermarket and we ask 25 people, name me 10 wrestlers, I guarantee you 70% of them, this is a fact, 70% of them are going to say Bret Hart. You know, he's just a guy that everybody knows. One of the best technical wrestlers of all time. Synonymous moments. WrestleMania 13 versus Steve Austin. The year prior, WrestleMania 12, the match with Shawn, the Iron Man match, the screw job. He was an all-time tag team wrestler. He was supposed to wrestle Terry Bollea at SummerSlam 1993, but Terry Bollea played political chess pal and blocked Bret Hart from being great. Alright, so Bret Hart was robbed of a significant moment in wrestling history. There's a poster out there. Go look it up on the internet. There's a poster. Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 9, or SummerSlam 93. Bret Hart was supposed to get his win back from Hogan stealing the win at WrestleMania 9 with a black eye, pal. But more on Hulk Hogan's scandals later. This is about Bret Hart. Arguably the greatest technical wrestler of all time. Bar none. Super recognizable theme song. Just a recognizable character. You know, the black and pink. Everything about the guy is cool. He's in your top 10. I don't think you can refute this. So that's all I got to say about Bret for now.
Yeah, well, transitioning the Bret love, I mean, I've got number 9. Now,
Lovely.
I would never have thought when I was putting this list together, I would have Bret Hart, someone who I've trashed basically for no reason on this
I was
show.
going to bring that up, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Kevin, this shows my objectivity, right? And this shows the credibility of my list. Even someone I've potted unnecessarily numerous times over the history of our podcast, I've still had the decency and the common sense to rank him rightfully. I've got number 9. You've disrespected him and put him 10, pal.
Wow.
So, with that being said, perhaps furthering to your point, I look at Bret. I mean, there was the screw job, which is like his big, I guess, thing. Like that's when you think Bret Hart. To me, I think there's Montreal screw job and everything that encompassed that. That was, I mean, people who lived it will tell more about that, but that is one of the absolute biggest moments in wrestling history.
Yeah,
that changed multiple companies, that changed wrestlers' careers, that changed the balance of the Monday Night Wars. That was monumental. Everything encompassing Montreal, and Bret Hart was quite literally in the center of it. So that was huge. But beyond that, he's a great wrestler. Granted, some people don't love his style, the technical style he honed his craft on, that he trained in the Hart Dungeon. He knew a million submissions, and that style wasn't for everybody. But what he did do is put on an unbelievable catalog of matches. The feud with Owen is the one I think of. I know everyone has their personal favorites, stuff involving Bret Hart, whether it's his match with Roddy Piper, his match with Perfect, his match with, I mean, there's a laundry list of matches and feuds the guys had.
SummerSlam 92, I'll throw that out there with British Bulldog too. That's an absolute classic in wrestling.
Yeah, 100%. To me, it's those Owen matches in 94 are just synonymous with him as well. I mean, he was great against Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. That's his other sort of big match as well. That match made a guy who's going to feature quite highly on your list, quite highly on mine, and we'll get to later in Stone Cold. But yeah, Brad, there's so much that goes with him. He started his career about mid 80s or late 80s. He's in Hart Foundation, the tag team. He's getting his name out there in the WWF, and gradually works his way through, becomes the top guy. He does the old school thing where you be a tag team guy, you work the mid card, you become the IC champion, then you become the world champion, and as you say, number 1 guy, number 2 guy to Shawn, and in the mid 90s. One thing that does, I guess, hurt him a tiny bit is the fact that the era he was like the top guy / second guy in wasn't a great one, the new generation era. Like that's the only sort of thing. But that being said, that didn't stop me from putting Kevin Nash, Diesel, 25th all time. So I must be fair there. That being said, yeah, his career was ultimately sort of cut short. I feel like there could have been more in the 2000s with Bret. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that play out. He couldn't really, I guess I'll say, capitalize off the screw job as much because within about a year or two, WCW butchered it, and there's a lot involving that I'm not going to go into. But yeah, Bret, number 9 all time. I've gone higher than you, which surprises me.
Yeah, I was surprised when we did our top, our 20 to 11. I thought for sure Bret Hart was going to be there for you. I mean, he was almost there for me. I fiddled around with putting Triple H in this spot, or Brock Lesnar, Andre the Giant, and having Brett just miss it. But I think Brett just means too much to wrestling. He's a top 10 guy, like you said about Triple H last week. Bret Hart is a guy that I look at and I say, okay, it's a top 10 guy.
Yeah.
So I go to my ninth.
Yep.
I have Macho Man Randy Savage at 9. In my first draft, I had Triple H in this spot at 9, and I had Macho Man at 12. So realistically, I look at my top 12, and I look at Macho Man, Brett, Brock, and Triple H. I look at all 4 of those guys as top 10 guys. You know, they're all top 10 worthy, and not all of them could be top 10. You know, somebody's got to miss out. I would just take the other 8 that I have ahead over those other guys. You know what I mean? Like, for me, Macho Man is a guy, I look at him, like you said about Triple H, he's a top 10 guy. Say that again, but I look at him, 5-tool player, could do it all. In the ring, was fantastic. Character, you could argue he's the most significant character, or most remembered character in wrestling history. Like, the guy is still on the cover of, like, Slim Jim snacks in grocery stores. You'll still see him there. He's in commercials still. And that's over a decade after he's passed away now, and probably like 30 years since the Slim Jim commercial was at its peak with him in it. He's just he's a figure of pop culture. His T-shirts are still around. His voice is still remembered fondly. We were talking about like when we talked about Eddie and Ray, we were talking about guys that you don't see a lot of bad things being said about. And Randy Savage is one of those guys, aside from that hit piece that WWE did and released on A&E. That was egregious and ridiculous. Other than that, you don't see a lot of guys say bad things about him. The WrestleMania 3 match with Ricky Steamboat, it's one of those matches, like I've kind of compared it to the three-pointer for basketball. It changed wrestling. People still to this day are emulating what Savage and Steamboat did over 30 years ago. Not just that, the big feuds with Hogan, with Flair, with Ultimate Warrior. Then the stuff he did in WCW was cool too. I mean, he wasn't prime Randy Savage by the time he got to WCW, but this guy, the character, the look, the colors, the presentation, the entrance music, he is what I think of when I think of a pro wrestler. He's one of the 3 or 4 guys that are like the perfect blueprint of a wrestler. If you could try to emulate one, I would recommend emulating Randy Savage. He could do it all. You know, it's not like when you look at Hogan, Hogan had flaws in his game. Hogan was not the in-ring worker that Savage was. And Savage was every bit as charismatic and memorable from a character standpoint that Hogan was. Hogan was just a little more commercial. But Savage could do it all. So, top 10 guy. Like I said, Brock and Triple H are also, I think, top 10 worthy. Somebody's got to miss out. I ended up going with Macho Man over Triple H. Mainly for me, the main reason why I did that was Triple H kind of had that point where he stayed around a little too long. Like in 09 and 10, where people are like, okay, we're kind of over it. Like, this guy's coming back again for a 20th babyface run. He looks like he hasn't been in the gym in like 6 months. Like, there was that era of Triple H that it was like, all right, go away. And then it kind of extended until like 14, 15, and 16. And yeah, he made Daniel Bryan in that time. But I just think, I just don't like, I don't think a guy that unanimously majority of wrestling fans were sick of for a period of time, like, I don't know if that guy could be top 10. That was what it came down to for me. Like, yeah, Triple H has everything that you would want in a top 10 wrestler. The look, the theme music, the great match catalog. He's got it all. But you could argue he stayed around just a little too long.
Okay, and with that, I'll transition to my 8th all-time. Now, this one, I think we could raise eyebrows, but I'll give my explanation. At number 8, I've got The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. This one, many people have him either like 3rd, 4th, 5th, anywhere in that sort of ballpark. I don't know where you have him, Kevin. 3rd to 6th is generally where I think a lot of people have The Rock. I bumped him down a few spots because of what's happened in recent years, where Roman Reigns, the Bloodline, everything encompassing the Rock's Samoan family, it's written in the stars. It is so obvious. It's just common sense. The Rock just should get involved. At least do one promo segment, one backstage segment. That would take you 30 seconds. Do one promo segment against Roman Reigns. If it would be so good of him, 2 appearances in a WrestleMania build-up and a WrestleMania match against Roman Reigns. Anything. It is just crying out. And The Rock's going, nah, I'll just sit on Instagram promoting Zoa and whatever other sponsorship deal can get me some cheap money. I'm gonna sit in the gym and promote supplements. I'm gonna do some action movie that's gonna get average reviews that some other actor's gonna like carry the marketing of. Like, I'm sitting there going, this is ridiculous. And yes, is this like a recency bias thing? Is The Rock, when you look at the body of work, especially from 96 through really the early 2000s, then his couple of year run in the early 2010s, is that and what The Rock did top 4, top 5 all time? Yeah, it is one of the absolute all time greats. There's nothing against that. Like that body of work, Kevin, 100%. I think most of that was awesome. Just about objectively, there's some stuff, as with all wrestlers, which wasn't the greatest, but on the whole, incredible talent, one of the greatest mic workers ever, greatest crowd engagers ever. In ring, he was always criticized for that, especially during late 90s, early 2000s. He was, he can't wrestle. But really, we have plenty of these he can't wrestle guys now, top 10. It's not all about the wrestling in the ring, but when I look at The Rock, the last few years have hurt him. WrestleMania 37, Dwayne, come on. The Rock, this is your moment. Come on, come back. This is your moment. He's let us down. WrestleMania 38, come on, Rock Roman. Rock wrestled Hogan at 18, Cena at 28, Roman at 38. That's written in the... Rock let us down. WrestleMania 39, it's in Hollywood. The Rock's a Hollywood guy. It makes so much sense. Rock, Roman, it's written as... Dwayne let us down again. But pal, he'll show up in Colorado on a random SmackDown in September, pal, to beat up Theory. Great. Brilliant. And will it happen at WrestleMania 40? I mean, at this point, it'll stop Cody from winning the title, which should have already happened. It's all a mess. But this being said, one more time to recap before I get to you. The body of work, the wrestler himself, he's one of those, as you say, with Randy Savage, like the build a wrestler from the ground up. It would look something like this guy. He has so many of the tools, so many of the attributes, the aesthetic, the natural aesthetic, all of it. But recent years, he's pissed me off, and a lot of the fan base going, can he just show up, at least cut one promo, appear once in 3.5 years? And he does on a Colorado SmackDown in the middle of September 2023. It's like, Dwayne, get stuffed. Go promote your crappy Zoa. Like, I'm sick of this. Anyway, Kevin, over to you. Stop me.
All right, so I'm gonna go for my number 8 of all time. Mm-hmm. I have Bruno Sammartino in this spot. Okay. So from 8 to 1, I put all the guys that have been the singular number 1 guy in WWE, WWF, and WWF history. I think those 8 spots are reserved for those guys. And it's starting with Bruno. Bruno being the one that's ranked the lowest for reasons that you kind of discussed that I won't harp on. Everything he did took place in an era where wrestling wasn't as big as it was in the culture. Wrestling was being built. It was being built and it was still territorial. But Bruno was the biggest star of the territory days in the biggest market in New York, selling out the biggest arena in the world in Madison Square Garden. I'm pretty sure he sold out Madison Square Garden more than anyone has. Like, aside from probably the Knicks and the Rangers. Like, how could you beat that? A lot of people will look at it and say, I've never seen him wrestle. I've never seen his work. Like, I can already picture the comments now from some viewers. I've never seen his work. Like, he can't be that high. Well, this is about showing respect to the people that came before, long before our time. And long before the time when things were captured and we had this capsule of history and we could watch it on the network. Like, you can't go back and really watch a lot of Bruno's big matches and moments. And maybe you wouldn't want to because his style wouldn't translate well to 2023. I don't know. I'm not saying I've seen a ton of Bruno matches. I've seen clips and stuff. And to mention Wilt Chamberlain for a moment. Never seen any footage of Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. I'm just saying. Throwing that out there. But nevertheless, I think he's more of the Bill Russell of the era just because Bill Russell won, 11 titles, And Bruno would be that guy, I would say. He was not the civil activist that Bill Russell was or anything like that, but just in terms of what he did on the screen and for wrestling, the guy, Bruno Sammartino, had a rough history with WWE, so that's also a bit of to consider here. WWE really didn't acknowledge his legacy until he got inducted in the Hall of Fame and he mended defenses with Vince, but the guy hated Vince McMahon for a while. And it's a common theme with a lot of guys that we've mentioned in this upper tier of a list. Bret Hart, notorious having problems with Vince. Macho Man had a lot of problems with Vince. Yeah. So and now we have Bruno. Um, yeah. That's all I got for Bruno. Go ahead, pal.
One more thing on Bruno. The reason I say Wilt, I mean, Wilt was a two-time champion. Bruno was a two-time champion. So that's Bill Russell, because how great that Celtics team was with 8 Hall of Famers on it, won like 11 titles, and it was just like it was borderline to the point of like a Randy Orton. It's just stat padding numbers. It's that ridiculous, but nonetheless, let's move this on. I'm going to move on to my number 7. Now, this one, you rank this guy number 12, actually, and you've mentioned in passing his name there. I've got Triple H. I think anything above, obviously, I don't think Triple H is a top 5 all-time guy. He's just not. I think what you say about him is fair. Was he ever the number 1 star, the guy? No. But did he put on a body of work through, many years? And I take what you say there very fairly. That's a very fair point of Triple H, that were there times he was around too long? Yes, I think of a perfect example of that. 2010, he's feuding with Sheamus in like the 4th match of the show at WrestleMania 26 and Extreme Rules 2010. It's like, does Triple H need this? And the answer is no. But across the body of work, what Triple H did, you listed yourself the positives and everything comes with it. The recognizability of the name, as you say, with the supermarket test. Triple H is a guy, people just know Triple H. He's just that cool of a wrestler. The entrance itself, the music's iconic. The motorbike part of it, everything with Motorhead. That many iconic WrestleMania entrances, which is a big deal, I think. WrestleMania is a showcase of the Immortals, and Triple H is one of, I'd say, like a couple of guys who I associate with WrestleMania. And the other ones of them are going to come in my next few spots. He's just, to me, Triple H is synonymous with WrestleMania. From, the WrestleMania 12 thing with Ultimate Warrior, and then he really took off as he got towards WrestleMania 14, and then, WrestleMania 2000 when he's main eventing, and then he's wrestling The Undertaker, he's main eventing against Jericho. There's a Booker T thing that was controversy. There's a main event 5-star or 4.5-star match you can't talk about anymore because of what happened with the winner 3 years after that. WrestleMania 21, he's main eventing against Batista, putting over the Future. He's putting over Cena the next year. Triple H is one of the most giving superstars of all time. And for years, his reputation was he buries people because he beat Booker T in a match that was questionable. And he beat someone on a Raw once. Like, Triple H is one of the most giving guys of all time. You go through the WrestleManias, he's done so much. He's wrestled all the greatest of all time, pretty much. A legendary wrestler. Great talker. Legendary heel. He was the top heel in the Attitude Era from 2000 and 2001. Then they tried to make Austin that guy, and it just didn't click, as we've discussed many times. He's just iconic, Triple H, and not to mention his stuff in the 2010s when I was watching that feud with the Undertaker in the 2010s version, end of an era Hell in a Cell, one of the great modern WrestleMania matches. That is just a simply iconic match. And it seemed like every year he was on a big WrestleMania match, which you say. In some cases, he was staying around too long. The WrestleMania 29 match against Brock, forgettable, but it was a big match against Brock. WrestleMania 30 against Daniel Bryan, everyone talks about. Wrestled Sting, a lot of people like that. The WCW, WWE thing. The Roman main event at 32, and he's wrestled Rollins. He's done so much. Batista in his farewell, or the Triple H. I've got number 7. I really respect him, and I think what he's doing nowadays as well. Yes, it's not in the ring. It's behind the scenes, but that's a big tick. Compared to Dwayne, who doesn't want to be seen associated with wrestling and rather promotes Zoa in some gym at 4:30 a.m. for his Instagram followers. So wow. Triple H, number 7. There you go.
Wow. All right, number 7. I have Triple H's best friend and the head booker of NXT, pal. HBK, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. But what can you say about this guy? In all honesty, this guy is like, a lot of people love him, and he's kind of done it all. When you think about it, he's done every single thing. He's had iconic Royal Rumble wins, big time WrestleMania main events, big time WrestleMania matches. And this is the thing, like, I think one day you and I should do like a top 50 wrestling matches of all time. Yeah. Shawn Michaels and another guy we mentioned already, Bret Hart, will probably have like at least 5 spots on that list each. Like, Shawn Michaels is just an incredible in-ring talent. He probably have more than 5, honestly, in the top 50 of all time.
He'd have 10 to 12, I'd say. I reckon.
Yeah. For me, it's his discography. His discography alone, his catalog of matches, That puts him in the top 10 just off of that alone. And then on top of that, you factor in he was a member of one of the most iconic tag team matches, an iconic heel turn on his tag team partner Marty Jannetty that everybody compares it to. Like you look at even like modern day, let's say the Shield, everybody would be like, "Oh, who's the Shawn Michaels of the Shield, and who's the Marty Jannetty, or who's the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty of this team and that team?"
Yeah.
We want to see like the Shawn Marty Jannetty turn and in the barbershop. Like it's just an iconic moment. And then WrestleMania 10, the first real like commercial ladder match with Razor, all time great match. WrestleMania, what was it? WrestleMania 14 with Austin. Guy put over Austin, made Austin the star that he is, or cemented him, I should say. And then he comes back from his early retirement, whatever. Had a lot of controversy in the mid 90s, a lot of drugs involved, a lot of fornication, which doesn't need to be mentioned right now. He retires from a back injury, comes back 5 years later, 2002, casually puts on an all-time great classic match at SummerSlam with Triple H in his first match back in so many years. Then just went on a run after that. It was like banger after banger after banger. WrestleMania 19, Jericho, classic. WrestleMania 20, triple threat match that you mentioned. WrestleMania 21, in my opinion, a top 5 match all time versus Kurt Angle. 22, got a classic match out of Vince McMahon. 23, classic with Cena. 24, classic with Ric Flair, with what should have been Ric Flair's last match, but Ric Flair's retirement. 2009, 10 follows that up with classics with The Undertaker. In my opinion, 2009, WrestleMania 25, that's another top 10 match for me.
That's the greatest match of all time, but carry on.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, so all the way up until his retirement, put on classics. He's so recognizable. The DX thing, the Sweet Chin Music is probably, I'd say, a top 3 or top 4 finisher of all time. It's right up there with the RKO in terms of like recognizability and viral and just overall awareness. You'll see regular people on social media, like if you see someone get kicked in the face, you're like, "Oh, he's Sweet Chin, hit him with the Sweet Chin Music." Now that move has been pimped out so much, it's kind of disgusting at this point. Like we've seen some guys pimp it out. I'm not gonna mention any names right now, there's no need.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, the discography, the recognizability, classic finisher, star power. And he's probably the greatest in-ring performer of all time. Let's be real. This guy is probably the greatest to ever step foot in between the ropes.
No, it's hard to dispute. And when I just think Shawn Michaels, I think the best way I can describe why I got him number 6, because he's my number 6 all time now. We're going to move on to the 6th position. I've got number 6, so very similar to you, just one spot higher. WrestleMania is the biggest event in, I mean, what we cover, what we do, just wrestling, pro wrestling, sports entertainment, all of it. WrestleMania is the biggest event, and this guy is Mr. WrestleMania. So, I mean, that's about as good as you can get from a standpoint. He consistently, time in, time out, performed on the big show. You listed those matches, that run he had in the 2000s. In the 90s, he had some great matches as well in that WrestleMania, and he's just so synonymous with that event. And who can forget him coming down from the rafters for the Iron Man match? Just everything he did. He was a natural performer. He got the show business, the performance side of it. DX was a great example. Some things went a bit far with DX, but that was the times. Other things, just synonymous to wrestling. And then the in-ring, you got in between the ropes at a big event, and he knew, Sean Higginbotham knew, now's go time. Now's the time to put my best foot forward. He always did. I'm struggling to think of like a blight, like a genuine like asterisk negative on Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. Even at SummerSlam, a lot of it, yes, there's a controversial match with Hogan, but a lot of it's big time, memorable stuff.
Even that match is one of the most fondly remembered matches of all time, too. Like everybody loves that match with Hogan.
Yeah, like when the lights are on brightest, he pretty much never underperformed, which is just a testament to him. That gets him, 6th all time is damn good. So yeah, I've got Shawn here. Nothing but respect for Shawn. Outside some things backstage in 1996, but 1997. But besides that, nothing but respect for Shawn. Absolute legend. There you go.
Yeah, there you go, pal. I saw a clip recently circulate the internet of him blatantly lying to Bret Hart's face on a documentary right after the screw job happened when Bret was asking him if he knew about it. So yeah, very scandalous, pal. Nevertheless, an all-time great. Hats off to him. Yeah. At number 6, I have your guy, The Rock, that you went a nice diatribe about.
Yep.
For me, I'm going to focus more on the great things about The Rock instead of more
Please
recency
do. Please do.
bias.
We need balance on this podcast, pal.
The
Please
only
do.
thing I'm going to say is that I'm just disgusted and appalled at how he blatantly lied to all of wrestling fans' faces in Colorado on the Pat McAfee show prior to Colorado playing their game a couple weeks ago. The Rock shows up on ESPN. Pat McAfee's like, "Hey man, we've had a rumored match with Roman Reigns. Like, is it gonna happen?" He's like, "Yeah, it was supposed to happen at WrestleMania 39. We worked out a deal. We toasted to some Terramana tequila. Couldn't resist plugging into the Terramana." And he lied to all of us and said that match was supposed to happen in Hollywood. Liar. Dwayne Johnson is a liar for that. That was almost as big of a political chess move as one of Hulk Hogan's insane political chess moves. Not quite there with some of Hulk Hogan's A+ apex political chess moves that I'm going to discuss, but still, Dwayne lied to us. All right, now the positives of The Rock.
Wow.
The Rock is arguably, in my opinion, the greatest mic worker of all time. He's probably the biggest megastar in the history of wrestling. Like, if we're looking at a guy that was at the absolute peak of his powers, like, I don't think anybody was more famous than The Rock while they were in a WWE ring. I don't know. I mean, you could say Austin maybe at his peak or Hogan, but I think Rock was a little bit more commercial than probably all of them. In a different era, The Rock would have been by far, in a way, the number one guy. He had to share the ring with Austin, and it's just, that hasn't happened since, and who knows if it'll ever happen again, where you have two number one guys in the WWE at the same time. It's just an unprecedented time. The guy was the second biggest, the 1B to the Attitude Era, the most important era, most synonymous, most well-known era in wrestling history. Everything he's done, the great matches, the all-time big fight feels, the iconic moments that give you goosebumps, once in a lifetime with Cena, Icon versus Hogan, WrestleMania 17 versus Austin. Those are three of the biggest, most well-known, most marquee matches in wrestling history, and The Rock is the common denominator there in all three of them. That's all I got to say about The Rock, pal. I won't add too much.
Yeah. We'll move on. So that's your number 6. And number 5, this one I was like, do I have him 4? Do I have him 5? I was like, what? How do I do this? I've got him 5. I've got The Undertaker at number 5. This one, I was just like, it's so hard to assess with him because to me, he was never the number one face of your promotion guy, which is ultimately what was the reason he didn't make the Mount Rushmore. Because from an everything else standpoint, the longevity, arguably the greatest longevity of all time from a top sort of star. The in-ring, he was a damn good in-ring guy for someone who's 6'11". The WrestleMania catalog, I mean, it really picked up in the 2000s and it became iconic right into the mid-2010s. Should Brock have broken the streak? That's a whole separate debate. But what you can't deny is, I mean, those Shawn matches, the Triple H matches, his match against Batista, heavily underrated. The match against Edge that you're in attendance for. The match against Randy Orton, WrestleMania 21. One of Randy Orton's best matches, legitimately. So the body of work there, great. Undertaker never held world titles, really. I mean, this was the thing about him. That character, that was a world champion. It wasn't necessary because it was such a great character, which makes Undertaker hard to assess. Because with some of these guys, as we'll get to with my Mount Rushmore, they had an excessive amount of title reigns or they had really long title reigns. And you were like, yep, they're the guy, the objective top star for X amount of time, for X era. Undertaker was sort of around the main event mark for, definitely 20 years. He was around the mark in some way. And then in the 2010s, he'd show up every March and put on a WrestleMania classic for a few years and just appear at WrestleMania. So impossible to assess. In many regards, from the gimmick standpoint, I'd say he's the greatest sort of gimmick persona of all time. The way he took that, which, Kevin, it's been said to death, but if someone showed up in 2023 with that gimmick in NXT, everyone just be like, oh, that sucks. Get him off TV. He's a graveyard worker. He buries people. That's Shawn, what are you doing? Are you trying to lose the ratings to Tony Khan? That's what people would say in 2023. But he showed up in 1990 at Survivor Series, me and Mark, and made that one of the greatest things ever. So nothing but respect for The Undertaker. He's so narrowly missed out on the Mount Rushmore all time to me. The streak at WrestleMania, this is one of the most iconic WrestleMania performers. He just is. You associate WrestleMania, the greatest event in what we do, with The Undertaker's entrance. It's one of those things, but he's just so narrowly missed out. Nothing but respect for The Undertaker.
Pal, can I ask you a serious, uncut question right now?
Go for
Did Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, did he miss your Mount Rushmore because he went on a podcast, Joe Rogan's podcast to be specific, a couple years ago, and he said that wrestlers today aren't real men because they play video games? Is that
it.
why The Undertaker's not on your Mount Rushmore?
That got him up a spot. I love that. That was great.
Love it.
Now Xavier Woods plays up, up, down, down. Therefore, he's dropped a spot. I don't know. I thought it was fine. Anyway, carry on.
With
Carry on.
Paige, pal. I digress. Okay.
Wow. Kevin professional.
My number 5, pal, is none other than the Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
Ooh.
The Nature
Okay.
Boy. So
Go ahead.
I'll tell you why I disqualified The Rock from Mount Rushmore. I look at a guy that we're gonna talk about in a few seconds here, and that guy is just better than The Rock in every way. You know, who we're gonna speak on, but yeah. I think with The Rock,
Oh,
The Rock,
okay.
it's length of the career, really probably the number one reason. And yeah, the Roman thing, that's kind of upsetting. But Flair, for me, he missed out because he did most of his stuff in WCW, which is extremely impressive, to say the least. You know, but when he came to WWE in '92, he was the number one guy immediately. Comes in and is thrust into that spot, overtakes Hogan, overtakes Savage. Had a great year in '92, wins the Royal Rumble, whatever. But what this guy has done and what this guy means for culture in general, Ric Flair is probably the coolest wrestler. He's a guy that, Snoop Dogg and LeBron James and Conor McGregor and all these people have said, Ric Flair invented swag. Ric Flair was cool. Ric Flair was the first guy popping bottles with supermodels. You know, everybody wanted to be like Flair, have the Rolex, the alligator shoes. His influence on not just wrestling, but culture is unspeakable. And it goes today. The guy has one of the biggest marijuana brands in the country. He's killing it there. Anything you put his name on anything, it's gonna do well. He had a comeback in the 2010s when he appeared in the music video and had a song named after him by Offset, Ric Flair Drip. Everybody knows it. That brought him back, propelled him right back to culture. It was a big hit, and he's been kind of living off that now since then. Anytime he's involved in wrestling, anything he does, big. He does like any good dad would do, and he puts over his daughter to the moon and says a lot of wild things about her. Some people may not like that, but hey, that's his daughter, is what it is. There's some dark things about him that maybe some people would be like, you shouldn't even have him on your list. He's disqualified. But no, I mean, come on. It's Ric Flair.
Yeah.
You can't have a top 5, in my opinion, without Ric Flair being on it. The trilogy of matches with Ricky Steamboat, all-time classic matches. What he did for Sting, he made Sting, as people will say. All the stuff he did, big matches with Dusty, big matches with Hogan, WCW, big matches with Savage. Guy's been there, done it. But for me, it's the character, it's the flash, it's the flamboyance, it's the flair, if you will, pal.
Yeah.
One of the top 3 on the mic, the catchphrases. His theme song is iconic in culture. The woo, anytime somebody does a chop now, people scream woo. Yeah, it's Ric Flair, bro.
Well, just on that, we'll get to Flair shortly on my portion of the list. I think a guy who, Stone Cold Steve Austin himself says is the greatest of all time, Ric Flair. Again, Ric Flair, that's not just Austin, that's like across the board from a lot of wrestlers and like some of the greats. They say Flair's the greatest, the GOAT. I don't have him as the GOAT, I'll spoil that, but I think to not have him on the Mount Rushmore is egregious, personally. That's just my opinion. And it's your list. I don't agree with that. The wrestlers who know far more than I do about this and who live this at the highest level, like Stone Cold, you'll mention shortly, I'll mention shortly, have him as the greatest. So I understand all the rate. I'll get to what you said and build on that shortly. But that being said, Kevin, I'm ready for my number 4, okay? You ready?
Yeah, do it.
We're up to the Mount Rushmore all time. And to kick us off, I've got John Cena, number 4.
Me too.
There you go. So, yeah, I think with Cena, I lived perhaps the second half of Cena as the top guy. I didn't, live the first half like you did, where it was, he's wrestling Triple H at WrestleMania 22. He's main eventing Raws every week. He's, has the year-long title run that gets cut short because of the injury. And I don't live like that portion, so you can attest better to like that than I can. What I did see was a Cena who split the audience. he was objectively the big star, and why he's the Mount Rushmore and number 4 all time is because without him, I think WWE would have folded is dramatic because they were the conglomerate by then in 2008. But without him as the guy, who else was there? Who was going to be the star? Who's going to be the face? We've discussed this. What were the other options at the time? There weren't any. There's no other guy in 2009 who could have just emerged and been the top guy. There wasn't, like this is a guy in Cena who, as corny as it was, did he bury the Nexus? Should he have won a match here? Was WrestleMania 29 too predictable and not the right man? There's all that sort of stuff. Should he have turned heel? You've discussed this. But what objectively happened is from 2005 through SummerSlam 2014, this was the number one guy in wrestling, the number one guy in WWE for 9.5 years, which is a run which, as Paul Heyman said himself in interviews, no other guy has ever done that. Being the top face for quite literally 1 decade straight in the modern era, Kevin. That's going to every live event, waking up at ungodly hour o'clock, doing some radio interview, doing your 2-hour gym session, doing another media appearance, doing something like locker room leader stuff, meeting with creative, meeting with Vince McMahon, doing like working the show as the main star who everyone's coming to see, getting on your tour bus, having 3 hours sleep, doing it all again the next day, seeing your family like 15 days a year. That's quite literally what Cena did for, over 10 years, probably about 15 years, really, from when he was nearly fired through until when he's become part-time. And even still, it's part-time. He does some great stuff. And I don't know. But Cena, some people, like the Attitude Era sort of fans, still crap on the guy and hate him. Oh, he couldn't wrestle. Oh, he was corny. Cena can be corny. That's just a part of the guy. But his promo work's so good. In the ring, he's one of the greatest to do it. That's the thing. For so many years, it was he can't wrestle. And then for so many years after that, he's proven that wrong. He showed that he can hang at any level. He can have great matches against damn near anyone. He has his own style, the 5 moves, yada, yada. But so much was great about this guy, and no one else could have done what he did. If he didn't step up and be the guy for 10 years, who knows where wrestling is. So, yeah, Cena's made my Mount Rushmore. Number 4 all time for me. Same with you.
Yeah, well said on Cena. I'll add this. I had Rock originally in the 4th spot, but I looked at it, I was like, Cena's just better than The Rock. He just is. Like, Cena was here for over 10 years as a top guy. He had the big matches, big moments. He lived it. He was a true top guy, and he still shows up. That's big too. That's huge. That Cena still comes around. He doesn't have to anymore in 2023. He's on every week on SmackDown. He wrestled a big match at Fastlane. Like, the guy bleeds WWE true and true. And yeah, he's one of the best on the mic. He owns one of the best gimmicks of all time, the Doctor of Thugonomics in the Ruthless Aggression era. That gimmick, the rapper gimmick, is still talked about, still iconic. Right place, right time from a culture perspective. And I don't want to harp too long on Cena. You all know why he's the greatest. So yeah. All right, pal.
Yeah, definitely greatest the last 20 years, no doubt. Next, Kevin, my number 3, this wrestler, he's once again another objective Mount Rushmore guy. I don't think you can have a Mount Rushmore in good faith for wrestling without him on there. I've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think Austin, you'll get to him shortly. He saved the WWF. He won the war. He was like the main one who was the guy everyone wanted to see. He was the one you were changing the channel to watch in an era where wrestling was in, its biggest boom period as far as, definitely the adult demographic watching wrestling and wanting to see it. There was the 80s with Hogan, which I'll get to specifically, but Austin did so much in a short time span as well. This is the thing with Austin, because really, yes, there was some stuff in WCW when he was in the mid-card, and there was a bit of ECW sort of promos in the mid-90s, but he came on board to WWF 1996, and he was the ringmaster, and he's having a strap match against Savio Vega, and he's sort of just, he's a mid-card WWF guy. And then all of a sudden you get to 1997, and then boom. Yes, there's the match against Bret Hart, Survivor Series 96, but 1997, boom. It clicks for Stone Cold. And then it's really about 3 years of that first run, where it's from, 97, he wins the Royal Rumble, and then he goes on the incredible WrestleMania match against Bret Hart. He's like the sort of anti-hero face. You're cheering him, but he's not acting like a clean-cut, good guy baby face, which was so perfect for the times. The times in the late 90s, you weren't wanting to see Hogan coming out, doing his thing, flexing, beating the big evil bad guy. Times have changed, and WWF with Austin adapted to that. Austin was the guy. And then, yeah, we get to 98. He's coronated the champion. He has his incredible year, 1998. Austin's just the guy in wrestling. He's the star. You got WCW trying to like make Bill Goldberg and stuff to try and counter him. Austin is just the star. He's so significant. 99, he wins. There's the WrestleMania 15 match. Not the greatest Austin Rock match. Mankind's having a great year. Austin's still obviously the guy. He's the one who's popular. Triple H is accelerating. And other guys sort of start to get up to the level. And then Austin has to go off for the surgery. He's away for a year, which does that stop him from being number one or number two all time? In my eyes, yes. The fact that in the middle of his prime, he had to miss a year, that's a big deal in such a time period. Then he came back, and many people say that's the greatest time period for wrestling from 2001, like the first few months, Royal Rumble, No Way Out, WrestleMania 17, just an iconic stretch. Austin's at the core of it. Then the heel stuff, I don't know. Like, to me, that's a little asterisk. I mean, it didn't click like you'd hope. But regardless, I mean, what Austin did in really that 4-year run itself, from about end of 96 through, end of 99, first half of 01, and just his legacy generally, what he did for wrestling is just objectively Mount Rushmore. There's no debate or dispute there, in my opinion. I've got him 3. It's sort of semantics, I think. I just don't think there was enough time, and this is the criticism that gets brought up with Austin. It wasn't enough of a body of work. It just wasn't. He took his ball and went home in 02. There was the WrestleMania 19 match where Austin nearly died beforehand. He was in no shape. He was in the hospital afterwards. As soon as the match ended, he was rushed to the hospital. And then he was the commissioner, and then he's had the match against Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38 as like a one and done. But yeah, what Austin did in a few years was Mount Rushmore level. It was so significant. So Kevin, there you go.
There you have it, pal. At number 3, I have Undertaker.
Yeah.
So I had Undertaker on the Mount Rushmore. Flair was the other guy in consideration for this Mount Rushmore spot. I went with Undertaker. Mainly, I have Undertaker top 3 for this reason. Like you said, he wasn't really a top guy, the singular top guy. I disagree with that. There's definitely a case to be made that when Cena was kind of cooling off, you could argue that Undertaker was the top guy from like 09 to 2012, 2013. There's a case to be made. The streak was the biggest draw single-handedly for WrestleMania from 07, 08, 09, 2010, and 11. So 5 straight WrestleManias where the streak was more important than the championship, that the prop that Cena and Orton were trading back and forth, or Jeff Hardy was winning, and Edge and Triple H and all these guys were just flip-flopping, trading back and forth. The streak, WrestleMania 25 and 26 were definitely built around the streak. 24 had Floyd, but other than that, it was the streak. It was Edge going for the streak. 2007, Batista going for the streak. That was the big spot. They were supposed to do Cena and Triple H in a rematch, but it was the streak. Ended up being
Battle of Billionaires.
We can't talk about that, pal. We'll get our channel flagged.
Okay, go on.
So, yeah, Undertaker, to me, the streak was bigger than the 2 major world championships during his run, during the peak of the streak. And then 2013, you could say that the streak was the only good part of that WrestleMania. Honestly, the Undertaker's match with Punk, like, the guy meant so much for wrestling overall. As you said, the greatest gimmick of all time, by far. I don't even think that's like can be debated. He lived through many eras, constantly reinvented himself, constantly evolved, stayed current, found a way to keep his character cool, keep the mystique. He was a true wrestler's wrestler. Like, usually kept kayfabe before he started doing these podcasts and stuff post retirement. But there's like video out there of him appearing at a Post Malone concert in Gimmick, and backstage at a wrestling an NBA game in Gimmick. There was the American Badass stuff where he broke character a little bit, but that was different. When he was Undertaker, he was Undertaker. He was always on. The guy's an all-time great, top 5 guy for sure. It's the same thing with like my top 10. Like, there's 12 guys that could be top 10. There's 5 guys that could be on the Mount Rushmore. Fortunately, Flair was the one that missed out for me. Undertaker, what he did, he's got to be like behind Cena and Rock. He's got to be the 3rd most recognizable wrestler in the world. I think that counts for something too. Big star, so on and so forth. Everybody
Yeah.
knows his resume.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's yeah, as you say, like I'd love to have Undertaker in my Mount Rushmore, but really, you're trying to fit 5 guys into 4 spots. One's gonna miss out. Same thing as you said with the top 10. You're trying to fit like 12 or 13 guys in 10 spots. Some, it's just it's semantics. Then Kevin, I'll get to my number 2. You had him as your number 5. I got Ric Flair. Flair, as I said with Austin, this is Stone Cold and so many other wrestlers GOAT, which counts for a lot to me. And I think what Flair was able to do, yes, it wasn't WWE, WF. I take that. That's a fair point you made before, but what he was able to do was so significant. I mean, for culture generally. Yes, as we'll get to with Hogan, who's, as you now just all figured out, it's my number 1. Hogan made wrestling more mainstream. He propelled it into the stratosphere, but Flair was the guy who was there at the same time for the same length of time, the 80s, the 90s. He was cool. He was more the adults wrestling in a lot of people's eyes. He was the one who had the better matches. He could cut the more sophisticated promo. He had more personality, many would say. Like there was so much more to come with Flair. His match catalog is incredible. Just from the in-ring standpoint, he was phenomenal. Everyone remembers from a WWE standpoint, his 1992 Royal Rumble is famous, the greatest Royal Rumble match of all time, many would say. Yeah, he didn't do a lot in the WWE, and especially in the 80s and the 90s. He was the champion for a little bit. He wrestled Randy Savage at WrestleMania. All awesome, but all his work was done outside the WWE, which says a lot. The fact that he's a Mount Rushmore guy when his real prime years were spent elsewhere, it's a testament to Ric Flair and what he could do for the culture from that position. The fact that he wasn't even in WWE. In the 2000s, he's in Evolution, so he's literally in the main segment on Raw and like multiple segments every week on Raw for like 3-4 years. He has matches against Triple H in the mid-2000s. He extends his career out till 2008, where he wrestles a match which you were there for, which must have been incredible. So emotional against Shawn Michaels. What happens after that, I don't want to discuss. That's a fair critique. Everything that happens after that, some very questionable stuff. Ric Flair's last match, I'm choosing to forget. I'm choosing to ignore that strategically because that was bad enough to get you taken off of Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
That's how bad that was. That was so egregiously disgusting. But I'm just not going to address that. I'm going to focus with Ric Flair on the really 30-odd years from the early 80s through the late 2000s, where he was a synonymous figure for pop culture and did so much good for wrestling and had so much great stuff associated with him. So, yeah, Flair's my number 2. He's the greatest for many. There you go.
Yeah, him as a 70-year-old man faking a heart attack in front of loved ones in his last match didn't help him a lot when I was like, oh, should I put Undertaker there or Flair? Yeah. The TNA stuff was embarrassing at times. Yeah, not great. Not great for an all-time guy. Don't want to see that.
Just quickly before you go on your one, you mentioned earlier with Triple H and how like at times you thought he's sort of staying a bit too long. And it was like a mid-card thing against Sheamus or something like that. With Ric Flair, you really did say it where someone just couldn't let go.
Yeah.
And I mean that'll be the same with Hogan, as I'll get to with my number 1. But yeah, Flair, from everything after he came back in 2008, there wasn't much great. There was an infamous Ric Flair Hulk Hogan tour, Power Down Under. They wrestled in like 2010. Anyway, all that being said, Flair's not my number 2. Who's yours?
My number 2 is Terry Bollea, the real American, the icon, the Babe Ruth of this business, pal, Hulk Hogan. For one, the guy is single-handedly carrying my YouTube channel with just scandal after scandal after scandal. He's more famous at this point in the game. He's more famous for what he's done outside of the ring than what he did in it. It's just scandal after scandal, pal. That's why he's not number 1 all time. And I'll tell you that, like, one of the main factors, aside from the video that surfaced and all that, one of the main factors was his political chess move at Bash at the Beach 2000, pal. He's responsible for one of the most unprofessional, one of the most ridiculous, ludicrous moments in wrestling history, pay-per-view history. People paid money to watch political chess play out between 5 central figures in WCW. All right, like that's just an embarrassment. Like, people talk about Victory Road and Jeff Hardy showing up high on heroin to a pay-per-view. Terry Bollea played backstage politics, threw creative control out there, put himself first before the business, pal. All right, we never seen anyone do something as disgusting in the history of wrestling. And even if Austin didn't want to do something, or Shawn Michaels didn't want to do something, guess what? They still did it, pal. Shawn didn't want to put over Austin at WrestleMania 14, but he did it anyway. No, Austin, yeah, he walked out, but he came back, and he did business, and he put over The Rock at WrestleMania 19. No, so there you have it. Now let's talk about the good things of Terry Bollea.
Yay! Woo! He finally got to the good. Let's go, pal.
Yes, he's a great promo. Iconic character. Say your prayers, eat your vitamins. What more can I say? The guy, I mean, he was the most famous wrestler in the 80s. He made wrestling what it is. He made wrestling mainstream. He put wrestling on the map. He is the pioneer from a standpoint. Him and Vince McMahon built the WWE into what it is. They almost didn't make it through the steroid trial, but without Hogan, we wouldn't be here doing this podcast. And that's really what it comes down to, man. That's why I have Hogan and Austin 1 and 2. Without them, there is no wrestling. Point blank. Without those two guys, we would not. Without Hogan, there wouldn't be wrestling. Without Austin, we'd be watching WCW Thursday Night Nitro Dynamite on TNT, watching Hogan versus Piper for the 100 millionth time, and So yeah, Hogan. Without him, there is no wrestling. I don't have much to say. He's your number one. Yeah. Go ahead, pal.
Well, that line you just said is why. Without Hogan, we're not doing this. There is no wrestling. WrestleMania never gets off the ground. Does WWF come out even in the 80s as the best territory? Maybe not. Who knows? It's probably a battle, and do they ever get... Hogan, as I said earlier, propelled the WWE, or F at the time, into another stratosphere. He made WrestleMania. He was the star. It was Hulkamania. It's what 33 million people tuned in to see on Saturday night's main event against Andre in February 1988. He main evented how many of the first 9 WrestleManias? What, 8 of them? 9 of them? He was...
all of them except like WrestleMania 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he was like the central figure of the first decade of WrestleMania. Yeah, WrestleMania 9, whatever. And yeah, with Hogan, there's stuff that comes along with Hogan that's just like, there's so much controversy, there's so much drama, there's so much scandal, which you addressed there. He's one of the greatest in a negative sense, like off screen, behind the curtain, most infamous, most notorious is probably better words to use. There's so much involving him, it is ridiculous. But I want to address just, what he did to make wrestling what it is. Without him, yes, you can hate him, obviously. Oh, yes, he's racist. He said this in this tape, that he said this, or the trial this, or he said this on a podcast, which is clearly a lie. Okay, great. Yeah, he's flawed. Terry Bollea, the person, there's a heap of flaws there. No one's saying Terry. We're not ranking the best human beings in wrestling. Terry would be nowhere near the top 500. What we are doing is Hulk Hogan, the wrestler. And what we got from Hulk Hogan, without that, we wouldn't be here. As you say, we'd be watching Thursday night, TBS, Nitro, Dynamite, Collision, Rampage.
That's Thunder. Without Austin.
Yeah, as well. Thunder featuring Lex Luger at 65 against like angry Bret Hart. And like that's what we'd be getting nowadays. So yeah, no, Hulk Hogan in the 80s, he put wrestling in another stratosphere. In the 90s, he nearly put the WWF out of business. He was the central point of the greatest stable. One of them in wrestling history, the NWO. There was that. 2000s, the Ruthless Aggression era portion, where he's in there in 2002, faces The Rock, one of the great WrestleMania matches, a 5-star match objectively. You get a crowd to react like that, that's a 5-star match. If you don't think so, kiss my ass. The rest of it, you got Triple H. Wow. He's feuding with Triple H. He's the WWF champion. Kevin, what was the key selling point of WrestleMania 19? What was the match?
Hogan Vince, pal.
Hogan, Vince McMahon. So the number 1 greatest wrestler of all time. It's number 29 greatest wrestler of all time.
Oh my God.
He moves in, and then there's the sub in the mid-2000s. He's still around the mark. This is like 25 years after he first became a huge star from the Rocky movies. 25 years later, he's still a big deal. TNA, he was the biggest guy, the biggest star in TNA, albeit, let's not discuss much of that.
He ran TNA in the ground. Let's just say that.
Well, yeah, that company ran itself. And Vince Russo talks all about it, pal. Once the wrestlers came in from Ring of Honor saying, oh, I know more than you. I wrestle great matches. And Vince Russo was like, there's no saving this company. Anyway, all that being said, one of the most controversial wrestler of all time, or one of them, the greatest wrestler of all time, Hulk Hogan.
Terry Bollea.
A bottom 5 wrestling human of all time, a wrestler, top 1. So there you go.
All right, pal. Well, I can't believe you put a guy who is the personal history that he has at number 1. I can't believe that is a disgusting move by you, pal. All right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pal.
If you say you've used the phrase political chess more times in this episode than I've ever heard it in my life. You've used the phrase political chess like 15 times. Anyway.
Pal, Terry Bollea is associated with more infamous incidents and more negativity than anyone else, pal. With that being said, my number 1, Stone Cold Steve Austin. All right, pal.
Wow.
Without Stone Cold Steve Austin, WWE would have lost the war. Let's be frank about it. When the NWO was running wild in '96, when Hogan was face painting people with the black paint, WWF they had the mayor Glenn Jacobs as a dentist. They had a garbage man. They had a repo man. They had clowns. They had fast food workers. You had the Taco Bell Chihuahua in main events, pal. You had Bulldogs. You had NFL players main eventing WrestleMania for no reason. But that was before stunning Steve Austin got fired by Eric Bischoff via FedEx. Thank you, Eric Bischoff. You created the greatest wrestler of all time. You put the chip on his shoulder. He goes to ECW, cuts some scathing promos, comes to WWE. Brian Pillman pulls a gun on him, pal. And then there we go. We knew Stone Cold Steve Austin would be the one of the greatest. Now, your point was fair. Absolutely fair. 100%. Steve Austin didn't have a career the length of Shawn Michaels or Undertaker. But what he did in a short time frame is more impactful, more important than anyone else in the wrestling business, in my opinion. His run at the top of the Attitude Era, his run from '96 to 2001 when he shook Vince McMahon's hand. Nobody's had a better, more impactful, bigger commercial run than that ever. Steve Austin was the most famous celebrity to come from wrestling at that time in the '90s, in a time where pop culture was at its all-time high. Yeah, he was on TV Guides, pal. A lot of people love reminding us about that. So he was so famous that Eric Bischoff was like, "Hey, we need a bald guy with a beard, so we're gonna push Goldberg to the moon, pal." I mean, what can you say about this guy? On the mic, top 5. As a character, top 5. Entrance, top 5. Theme music, top 5. Finishing move, top 5. The Stunner, one of the most recognizable finishers of all time. Merchandise, he's still a top merchandise mover in 2023. I think he's like the number 3 merchandise mover behind LA Knight and Roman Reigns at this current moment, which is nuts to think about. Let that sit in. Steve Austin's been retired for 20 years, and he's still a top 3 merchandise seller in WWE. What more do I gotta say? Mic drop, pal. WrestleMania 17, big match with The Rock. But for me, it's all about impact. It's all about what he did. He carried wrestling. He carried the WWE almost single-handedly into becoming a publicly traded company. Without him, WWE would not be on Wall Street. It would not be the global entity that it is. It's similar to what Michael Jordan did for the NBA. So recognizable, so important. Steve Austin, pal. All-time great. His career didn't go as The Rock's did. Post WWE, a lot of people thought Austin would be this big actor. They tried in Hollywood. They had him be in movies. Didn't work out. Yeah, he has some flaws on his personal resume, too, that I've addressed on my channel. That we really can't mention or we'll get flagged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there you have it, pal. That is our top 10 of all time. The only one we agreed on was John Cena.
Kevin, we'll call it there. I think just hearing your take there with Austin, my take with Hogan is the greatest. We need to do a Hogan Austin GOAT debate.
Yes.
Like I think that warrants like an hour.
Yes.
Hour and a half podcast. It just does. There's so much to unpack there. We're not going to try and like rush and scratch the surface like a 3-minute version here. We're just going to park it there. That's going to be our top 10 greatest wrestlers of all time. Reply. This will not have to great engagement with you great listeners. What do you think? Who is your greatest of all time? What is your Mount Rushmore? Be definitive. If you're disgusted that one of us has had a wrestler in a certain position, give us reasons why. Give us why a certain wrestler deserves to be several spots above, or why wrestlers shouldn't be near the top, whatever. Tell us. So that being said, Kevin, any closing words?
Yeah, I'll just say this. Who do you think is someone that we didn't have in our top 10 that you would put in there? I feel like the most common name is probably Kurt Angle, if I were to guess. He didn't make either one of our top 10s. I feel like he's the most popular name that we'll see. Yeah, that's it for this one. It's been our top 10 wrestlers of all time. It was great doing this top 50 series.
But just yeah, it's been a great series. I've enjoyed doing this quite a bit.
Me too.
We'll revisit this maybe in a couple of years, see if any placings move around, anyone cracks in the list. I already want to put like I've revised back. I've had to think about it. I want to put Becky Lynch in the top 50. That's just one name I've been thinking about. I'm like, we'll get to that. That'll happen down the road. But for what we've done, I thought it's been quite a successful series. Hopefully, you guys have been really entertained by this. I think it's been great fun. This is a part of the year historically where not a lot really goes on. This is like your fast lane, your payback at the moment, the WWE. Usually it's like dead. But I thought this has carried on great momentum. There's been a lot going on wrestling, Kevin. This series has helped alongside that. So shout out to everyone who's listened to this. Everyone's engaged. Big thanks.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys on the next one. Got some fun content coming, so we'll see you then. Peace.